Every day we put a uniform on, right? And we have a tool of death that's attached to us. At any given moment, you can pull that out and remove somebody from the service.
Jason Lacayo. He's a police officer, community advocate, youth mentor, and public speaker with a viral social media presence. His signature style, humor, positivity, and authenticity has helped bridge the gap between law enforcement and the communities they serve.
People see the uniform and they only think of the uniform. They don't think about the human being. There's a spirit inside the uniform. There's a soul there. I lost a lot of friends when I became a cop.
Just instantly?
Just instantly,
You're a sellout.
Yeah, you're a sellout. I'm guarded 97% of the time. I don't really have my guard down. I'm always on edge. This thing definitely does take a toll on you as a human being. It's a lose-lose situation.
Maybe that man didn't want to kill another human being, and what that would wear on his fucking soul.
Yeah, man. I think the best way to deal with it is
Welcome to another episode of the Real Mentors Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Martin, and as always, REAL stands for Real Examples, Altering Lives, and my guest in studio today is absolutely a testament to that. His name is Jason Lacayo, and he's a police officer, community advocate, youth mentor, and public speaker with a viral social media presence. His signature style, humor, positivity, and authenticity has helped bridge the gap between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Jason uses his influence to inspire youth, uplift neighborhoods, and create genuine connection through service and leadership. Welcome to the show today, brother.
Man, thank you, Sean. Appreciate you having me on the show.
My pleasure, man. How fitting and how full circle is it that the book came in, Beyond the Bronx, From Prison to Purpose, and yet here and still I am sitting across from a brother who's a police officer. So I have not always had the warmest, fuzzy feelings about the job, as we know it to be the job, right? Police officer, we call it the job, or being on the job, in case anybody didn't know. And that's something that I think you were very familiar with, being a man of color, being from immigrant, Honduran background as well.
Yes, sir.
What were some of your early experiences growing up in terms of, how you viewed police?
So I come from a long line of police officers. My father was a correctional officer and my uncle was a police officer. So it kind of started with them. But then, as you get older and you go out and you try to find yourself as a young man, you start to have interactions with police. And my first interaction with a cop wasn't the best. I was hanging out. I was somewhere I probably wasn't supposed to be, but, back then you could police with a heavy hand. So, dude asked me for my ID and I was like, why? And then a slap later, then my ID comes out, right? So I didn't have the best outlook on police officers. It wasn't until I was way older and there was a guy that I really respected from my neighborhood that became a cop, and he was actually like a cool dude. Because, cops got the stigma of like being bullied in school. Somebody took their lunch money.
I heard that one before.
Yeah, like
I've said that one before.
Yep, that's like the go-to, right? But this particular guy was actually a cool guy, dressed nice, and he always drove nice cars, and he was respected in the neighborhood. He just he ended up becoming a police officer. So he was the first guy to kind of set the tone for me. So.
And what do you think? What do you think of that? Because what does this gentleman look like? Was he African American? Was he black? Was he Hispanic?
Light skinned black dude, and he was just a cool guy.
And you saw someone who looked the part,
yeah,
but also wasn't playing the stereotypical part.
Yes.
So I remember I never had bad interactions with police officers, mostly because I guess I wasn't that dark, number one. And even though I was in the projects, I was super respectful.
Yeah.
Never had that chip on my shoulder. And it goes back to even our Dominican roots, where my grandmother was extremely light-skinned. My grandfather was probably your complexion.
Okay.
But they were taught, you marry up. Wash that color out of you.
Yeah.
And it served me. Yeah, it served me, but it's fucked up that it happens that way. I had good interactions with police officers. One in particular, Angelo, who's a housing cop.
Okay.
And I remember going to my first Yankee game because of Angelo.
Oh, that's what's up.
Yeah, and it just never really dawned on me that cops were necessarily terrible people, but then also growing up during the 80s, 90s, in the projects, heavy hand for sure.
Yeah.
And deservedly so in some right.
Yes.
In some ways. Now, my outlook is wildly different, and I have a ton of respect for the job. And I now, as an adult, understand that police officers are a thankless job. And unless you have people around you that obviously understand the job and know you as a human being, but you get to see people at their worst. They're only calling you when they need you. They're only calling you when they're in the jam, when they've been wronged or there's violence or the threat of violence.
Yeah.
So it is a job that actually tears away at the soul of some of the officers
Just a bit.
over the course of a decade or two.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people, even in my community now, which is 95% white, where their parents were cops and maybe their parent was a lieutenant, but they would tell me stories of how the job definitely affects people for the worse because all the drama and all the pain and the bullshit you see starts to seep into your own life.
Yeah.
So you come from a family of law enforcement. When did you actually decide this is what I want to do?
Yeah. So for me, I was like 19, 20, and like everybody that I was like hanging out with was getting into something. And a couple of my friends got locked up. I had a real good friend of mine ended up getting locked up and doing 10 years. Then I had another friend of mine who was shot and killed. And so reality started to set in. You know, I'm out here on the weekends, going here, going there, you know, being a rambunctious like young guy and pretty much playing with like my life. You know,
Right.
you go to parties, and, you know, like you're not in the neighborhood you're probably not supposed to be in because we, you know, beefing with these dudes, but you're going to go to the party because the girls are there. And then you start to see like, okay, cool. I'm 19 years old, right? I got to get something formulated to try to become an adult. So my father was like, yo, start taking civil service exams. So I took everything under the sun, court officers, state trooper, NYPD. And, you know, I was actually contemplating going to the military.
Okay.
And then at that time, 9/11 had just kicked off. So, you know, I was a little hesitant because I didn't want to get deployed. So took every test under the sun, and then NYPD called me. And I was like, all right, I think I'm ready, man. And I became a cop I was 22 years old, man. I was a kid.
Damn.
I was a kid. 22 years old. I worked in the 4-6, and it was just running and gunning, man. From
in
like
the 46, that's when you started.
Yeah, that's where it started. 181
So
and
you seen
Riot
it all.
Ave. Yeah, man. And it's crazy because my aunt, she had lived on 183 in Valentine, so I knew the neighborhood. I knew it was a busy place.
And let people know, just in case they're not from the area, what we talking about.
Listen, they call the 4-6 the Alamo. All right, so just so you know, like the Alamo was the most violent square mile in the Bronx at that particular time. So I immediately was thrown into violence, and you know, you start to see the difference because you talk about like you having neighbors that maybe their parents were lieutenants and captains and so on. I grew up in those type of neighborhoods, so I was very accustomed to violence.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the guys who weren't accustomed to seeing street
Right.
violence and how it affected them. I was able to compartmentalize and process things. Meanwhile, you can see guys get kind of stuck seeing somebody laying there with a couple of holes in them. So I started to pay attention to my mental health very early on in my career. And I think it helped that I was aware enough to understand that this thing definitely does take a toll on you as a human being.
Yeah. And you talk about mental health. Was that something that the department was preaching or supporting, or where do you get the wherewithal? Where do you get the wisdom? Where does the light bulb turn off? Like, holy shit, I got to take care of this. And when does that start to become like your mission and a bigger focus on what it is that you do for yourself to be able to go out there and do the job in the right way?
Yeah, it happened like late in my career because when you're young, I mean, I don't even know if you're self-aware enough to understand that you're going through it. I was around people that weren't cops, and they were like, yo, man, like you're not the same. I've been a cop for a period of time. And so you don't know because I'm hanging out with these dudes and not realizing that, I'm talking about the job or like, now I'm guarded 97% of the time. I don't really have my guard down. I'm always on edge. And they're like, yo, you good, man? I had a close family friend who was like, you might want to talk to somebody, man. You changed a little bit. So, with every fiber in me, I fought it. And I was like, nah, I think I'm all right.
Yeah, nobody needs therapy.
Yeah, like I'm good. And this is before like people started talking about therapy, right?
Now it's normalized.
Yeah, because back then it was like, oh yeah, you're crazy.
So how's that show up? How's that change start showing up in your life? What are some of the things your friends seeing now? You're talking about you're guarded, but how's that showing up? What kind of behaviors? How are you showing up for your friends now or the ladies or whoever?
It was just, I lost a lot of friends when I became a cop. A lot.
Just instantly?
Just instantly,
Oh,
yeah.
you're a
Because,
sellout.
yeah, you're a sellout. Some of these kids were still in the streets, and I get it. You're trying to figure out, what you're trying to do as an adult. I get it, So, like, you don't want to be associated with me. And again, I couldn't be associated with you, obviously, right? But I started to become very, like lonely. Like I wouldn't go out with like my core group of friends. I wouldn't reach out, you know, and everything I did revolved around the job. And, you know, alcohol is a social lubricant, right? So you get off of work, you go to the bar, and I'm sitting there, I'm telling cop stories. So when I did go out with my friends, I'm talking about the job, and they don't want to hear that, you know? So you start to pick up on things like that and morbid humor. You know, you start seeing dead people, start going to accidents, and you see limbs here, limbs there, so you make light of it. You know, you'll tell a joke. So if a normal person who doesn't see those kind of things and you're joking about someone's foot being on the other side of the street, they're going to be like, oh, what's wrong with this guy? That's just, it's not normal, but that's how we compartmentalize.
And that's how any human being would deal with trauma. Like comedians be the first to tell you they come from some of the most traumatic situations because that's how
you make light of it. Yep. You make light of it.
So you start to kind of shift your friend circle. I'm guessing you gravitate more toward people that are on the job, people that get you. So now you're hanging around with just police officers, which is easy to now get trapped in that environment where it's you and then everybody else. So my issue personally with police officers, or the stance of police officers, was, and again, this isn't an individual police officer, but almost the culture of the belief in how policing is done is you're either with us or against us.
Yeah.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, it definitely does.
And you see it now, it's like defund the police. And I'm like, that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
That's the worst thing that could happen.
Now, I absolutely know why they're saying it, but it's like, how about we maybe, you know, retrain the police, not defund the police, because then who the fuck are you going to call
when the shit hits
the fan?
Yeah.
What are some of the conversations you're having with your friends that are open and not as short-sighted? That I actually, like, yo, Jason's my dude. He's a cop, and you know, I'm not crazy about cops, but what are some of the shifts or conversations you're having with your people that did stick around and didn't call you a sellout and actually respected or supported your decision?
Those are like my sandbox friends, kids I grew up with, man, and they were like, you know, I know that the profession changed you a little bit, but like, just remember who you are. And my family is very diverse, right? I got guys that your skin tone, guys that look like, you know, me, and even, you know, in between, right? But it's diverse in a sense where I have guys on this side of the law and I got guys on this side of the law. And I just remember working one night and they brought two of my cousins in. And I was mortified because I got a very unique last name.
Right.
So they're like, yo, man, like, you know this dude named Matthew Lacayo? And I'm like, oh, man, that's my cousin Matthew. He was in the holding cell. So I go back there and they treated them like human beings, man. That's like the first time I've ever seen anything like that. Because like normally, like you out there, I mean, obviously they were doing something and, you know, they got collared for it, whatever. But like I think when they realized that they were my like family, it was like, all right, well, let's get this dude a sandwich. And so that kind of opened up. Yeah, right. So they kind of, you know,
from I don't know what. That shit sticks to the cell wall.
I don't know what kind of cheese that was, but that thing was indestructible. It could sit in those bins for days and not go bad. It was wild. But, you know, I just remember them being like, yo, man, thank you for like looking out. And I just remember like people started to come around after that, right? And it just seeing like the human side of me. And when they're like, oh, yo, you know, your cousin got into this and you were like, you didn't turn your back on him. We're all human at the end of the day. Right? We're all gonna make mistakes. We all got that one uncle, we all got that aunt, we all got that cousin. No one comes from a perfect household. So I think when you realize that we're fallible creatures and we're all human, I think people start to see the human side of you, because I think people see the uniform and they only think of the uniform. They don't think about the human being. There's a spirit inside the uniform. There's a soul there. And I think when you start to now have these conversations where like you talk about your feelings, you say, hey, you know, like I felt this type of way when when this happened. Then you start to have these transparent conversations and people start opening up to me. So they stop looking at me as the cop and they start looking at me as the human being.
And that's awesome. And I'm going to this came to mind because I was in Massachusetts. This past summer, I was at a real estate conference and I went to drive the dudes that we were doing the event with back before I shot back to New York City. So it was at a lengthy drive. My dumbass decides I'm going to drive them back to the Encore where they're staying in Boston, about half an hour from downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And we get caught up in traffic, standstill traffic. We don't know what the fuck is going on. Then we see there's a garbage truck up against the railing. And cop cars everywhere. And we're like, okay, some shit went down. So the guys that are staying at the hotel hop out. They're like, listen, we could just walk across the bridge and whatever. And now I'm stuck. right? No good deed goes unpunished. Later, we get video. So the kid was able to extract, or I guess the people that were at the scene, and this is how it plays out, and I'm guessing my editor, I'll send it to him so he can play this in the videos, but there's this dude, and you see him, he's obviously deranged, and he's got a knife, and you can't really tell, and the dude that's filming is in the car. It's a young kid, and he's filming this happen, and it's 3 separate videos, and he kind of lunges toward the cop. Now, the cop's got enough distance. The cop puts his firearm, goes for the taser. And misses. And this guy, they get a hold of him, but he's slippery, and he wedges out, and there's 2 officers, and somehow he gets away. Now he's at the garbage truck. So I'm going backwards in the story.
Yeah.
He gets in the he goes to get in the garbage truck with the garbage truck sanitation workers in there. Now the shots are getting fired. But he's not hit, as far as I could tell in the video. The dude then has control of the garbage truck, pulls off. Now he's ramming other cars. He's running over light posts. And eventually he ends up in his bridge. Now, I don't know how that all happened, but I say that to say, and before all this, they were chasing him in hot pursuit because he was in a stolen car. So I sent this to my friends, and I post on social media. And my conservative friends from out west, you should have shot that motherfucker. It just so happened that the dude was black, the officer was white. Me being from the Northeast, I'm not that cold-blooded. Also, me having my history. Their argument is, well, look at all the lives he put in danger. And I instantly was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. But I gave all the credit in the world to that officer for holstering his weapon. And I just told them, I said to all my conservative friends who are so quick to end another human life, they're like, yeah, he probably would have thought he was going to end up in the paper. I said, do you think that man was thinking about ending up in the paper? Or maybe that man didn't want to kill another human being.
Bingo.
And what that would wear on his fucking soul.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? And they were so quick to just dismiss the fact that, yes, he did put not only the officer's, life in danger immediately, but then everybody else's. Yeah. So there would have been absolute justification to kill that man. No matter what he was doing or whatever his skin tone or the fact that he just robbed the car. But it's so funny how everybody has a fucking opinion and everybody's opinion is so right. But they didn't even take into account that officer would have murdered another human being.
He has to live with that.
And how that would have weighed on him and then his family and his kids and everybody else. They were just like, well, you're there to protect us, sir. You should have shot the motherfucker. How hard is it to have a conversation with a person who's so convinced that their side is correct on either side? Because I'm sure you have officers on your side that don't want to budge on their belief system. And then obviously there's people that they're armchair quarterbacks.
Yeah. It's a lose-lose situation. You're not winning either one of those arguments. I always try to bring it back to that person's a human. Yeah, every day we put a uniform on, right? And we have a tool of death that's attached to us. And at any given moment, you can pull that out and remove somebody from this earth. But I'm pretty sure people have seen this on social media. They'll play instances where police officers end up shooting somebody and the cop literally goes down to his knees and is like crying. It's not something cops wake up in the morning and look to go do, right? Like, I know I don't wake up in the morning and say, I wish I go out here and just get into some shit today. I don't want that. I want to be able for me to go home, all my coworkers to go home, and the people that I interact with to go home and be safe. I don't want to remove anybody from this earth. There may come a time where I'm faced with that, and I have been faced with that in my career. And and you have a split-second decision to make that call, right? So that cop went from a firearm to now saying I have 21 feet or I have enough room. I think I can tase this guy, right? And obviously, he did what he could. I don't want to Monday morning quarterback the situation. Yeah. Ended up getting slippery and the guy got away. But like, that's a risk it's a calculated risk that he took, right? Let's say he does end this man's life and they find anything minutial in there that wasn't by the book, they're hanging that man. He's going to lose his job. So that's probably running through his head. He's got a house, he's got kids, he's got a future to think about. Maybe that's why he holstered the gun. There's so many variables that play into that particular call, but that man to have the wherewithal to be like, let me go to the taser and go from there. I think a lot of people always say are quick to make a decision, but you have never been in that man's shoes. So it's easy to say, you should have killed him. But have you ever been in a position where you were given that opportunity And did you take the high road or did you take the low road? I mean, kudos to that guy.
Yes, I gave him more. I went on social, did like 4 stories in a row to like just kind of say, listen, we got to give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
But these guys are from the West Coast and they're from big red states. And, you know, I always joke, I'm in Long Island, which is the great red state of Long Island, right?
Yeah.
Just like if you go further enough past, you know, New York City, it's all red.
Yeah.
And they were just, oh, it's those blue states. And I'm like, damn, everything goes back to politics these days. Have you seen the job get more compromised since you've been on it with social media?
Yeah.
And how do you combat that? And what are some of the things you're doing personally to change that narrative, brother?
Ooh, that's a great question, man. Yeah, there's definitely division, right? There's going to be some people that are more left. There's going to be some people that are more right within the ranks, you know?
Yeah.
And on the opposite side, right? And I think the best way to deal with it is bring back the human aspect. I always say I police from the middle. I'm a middle ground kind of guy, right? Because obviously I grew up in poverty and I was able to kind of level up and get out of that, right? So I moved away from it. So I understand that dynamic. So I understand why when it gets hot, everybody's in front of the building, why we play our music loud and so on. Some people don't get that. So for you to have both sides of the spectrum to see like, all right, well, this is where I come from. This is where I live. I have to figure out a middle ground so that I can be relatable and I can have conversations because I never want to argue with anybody.
Yeah.
I want people to see the opposite side. And if it gets to a point where we start screaming and yelling, which I try not to do,
right,
then I end the conversation there. But I always tell people, it comes down to us being humans. And I think right now we're losing that side of humanity that we once had. You know, we're constantly in our phones. We don't really want to connect with one another. And now it's like, you have a different opinion, I'm going to cancel you. You say something that I don't agree with, you're canceled. And I really feel like we got to get away from that. I don't know if we're ever going to get back to how things used to be. It's
either,
never going to get that way.
I don't know because we all sheep. Some of us may be higher up on the sheep ranking than others. And some of us is fucking, we have no idea that we're being herded by social media and our belief systems. But it's an echo chamber of what you believe.
Yes.
Now, how do you maintain policing from the middle in an environment where if you go on the job, you're going to get one perspective. How do you balance policing from the middle where if you're on the job, you're going to get one that's skewed toward the job. But if you're out in the street, you're going to get one that may be skewed that way. How do you maintain your sanity? How do you maintain your humanity with both of those forces pulling at you? What are some of the practices? What are some of the things you do as a human being, brother, to maintain that belief system?
I'm always out in the community. That's like the one thing I do. That's how I ground myself. You know, the particular position that I'm in right now, I deal with like a lot of people with mental health issues, unhoused, and guys coming home from prison. So like, I just make sure that I'm on that side because that is a constant reminder of who we are as people. Because like, just because I do this job doesn't make me less compassionate to a person who, because they were born in certain circumstances that were beyond their control, I look at them as less of a human. I can't. We're all human, right? We all have shortcomings and we're all going to fall short one day. It's just my situation may be worse than yours. And that may land me unhoused. That may cause me to have a mental breakdown. That may cause me to commit a crime. I don't know, but I just know that the one thing I do is I constantly remind myself of where I come from. And I always put myself out in the community. I make sure I walk, I talk, and I have conversations.
So let's dive into, what you actually do in your day-to-day. And I'd also like to dive into how you've seen that change over the years.
Yeah.
Because I know we are heading in the right direction as far as policing. The problem is people want that shit to happen overnight.
Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight.
Nothing changes worth changing overnight.
Yeah.
Just the way it is.
Yeah, so I'm assigned to strategic initiatives, right, which is a part of our domestic violence unit for my department. So there's 3 of us in the unit. It's called the mental health outreach team. So we basically go out, we attach unhoused people to housing. We get people with substance abuse services. And if you have any kind of mental illness or anything like that, we make sure that you stay up to date with your, appointments and, your medications and so on. So we work with, we have a social worker and we work with several clinicians throughout the county. So constantly, boots to ground out there interacting with the community and helping them. I also do peer support for various departments in my county.
Now, how long ago did it find its roots? Like this hasn't
This
been
unit,
around.
This unit's been around for 15 years. We're like
Really?
Yeah. So we're one of the starters of this, the originators of this particular unit.
And this is White Plains PD.
This is White Plains PD. Yeah, they've been around for 15 years, man. And and they had a social worker back then that was attached to the unit that would go out and do these interactions. And so they saw the writing on the wall long before I think people were even thinking about this.
Now, is this something that's unique to White Plains, Westchester? Is this something NYPD is doing?
PD does it, but they don't. NYPD doesn't have a full-time unit that does it. They have people with allotted hours.
The most, in my uneducated opinion.
But the problem is the call volume, right? So bigger city, right? You get these busier boroughs, you're getting a ridiculous call volume. So for you to send out officers that are dedicated when you're in backlog, you got 12 jobs holding in a specific sector or whatever the case may be. It goes down to manpower and call volume. And some departments don't have the manpower to allocate bodies to do this kind of stuff.
Now, do you think that is a limiting belief because of the way that things have been? Do you think it's something that's doable? Are you seeing other major municipalities? And I don't want to, disclosure, this man is not responsible for changing the police system. So we're not going to hold you to it. But I always like to get creative. And in order to make change, we got to think outside the box. And it seems like in a smaller municipality like White Plains, this is working well.
Yeah. I mean, I think bigger jobs could do it. But essentially, you need to allocate the manpower to do it. And I feel like it's not like it was 20 years ago where people want this job. So it's harder to get, a new body on the job to want to do this because the older guys, they don't want to do this.
No, the older guys are just looking to get the fuck out.
Yeah, they're looking to get out. They're going to do their 20 or whatever their number is, and they want to get the hell out of there. So like someone like me, where, I'm on the tail end of my career, I just hit 20 years. I got to do another 2 because, I switched departments.
You switched over, right?
Yeah, so I got to give them the full 20. But, I saw this as a great, great, great tool that I can help, the community, and I can also help the guys that I work with. I said, hey, let me put my hat in the ring and see what happens. And I got it, and it's helped me, man. And I got a great schedule, and I'm affecting change. So I went from, going out there and, being this proactive cop to now being a guy who's proactive on the community side and helping others.
And you are, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a glass half full guy. I can hear it.
Yeah.
Because you said proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is policing is reactive.
Yes.
But in a unit like this, it can take a shift and start to become proactive.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I appreciate you even offering your opinion as it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And you can be misconstrued by either side.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there are challenges that people don't even take into account. They just see right and wrong and, well, this needs to change. And, things are changing. You see more police officers of color than you have ever seen in NYPD.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have representation by your people. But then, there's no right that you can do once you wear the uniform in some regard.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in terms? So I know a lot of brothers and sisters will start at NYPD because it's the, I guess, lowest barrier to entry, the biggest police force in the area. And then they quickly move on to other better paying, safer gigs on the outskirts. You did the same to some extent.
Absolutely.
You were there 2 years and you got your hook to take you up north.
Yep.
Closer to civilization and less fucking problems. Is that still a thing? Everybody just uses the NYPD as
It's still a thing. It's still a thing. But what I'm also starting to see is this new generation will just quit being cops. They'll just be like, you know what? I'm on to something else. I think we are the last generation of like sitting in one place and doing something for like 20 years, the commute. I think a lot of these guys are looking into getting, like these remote jobs. And, they want to know how much PTO they have.
So it's not even policing.
No, I think it's just a generational thing. I know, because I do believe that policing will always mimic whatever the trends are outside. So like I saw this thing the other day where would you take a job for $120,000, right? Or would you to be remote, or would you take a job for $240,000 to go to the office 5 days a week? And these kids were picking the 120 because they didn't want to do the commute. They didn't want to be, a a slave to the grind, as they say. So I feel like that is now transitioning over into law enforcement.
Yeah, I think they just haven't seen it work. And, when older people, because I'm 47, you're 40, a couple years younger, but we have a different perspective than they have. And it's easy to dismiss them as being lazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people realize, the younger generation in particular, like, what's the fucking glory in giving 50 years, my prime of my life,
there it is,
for a job?
There it is.
That in the end, the fucking pension or this whatever you get is peanuts.
Yeah.
That you barely just gonna get by. So I don't think it has to do with the job.
Yep.
I just think it has to do with the fact that people have realized that the inequity of spending your prime years, all of them,
mm-hmm.
doing fucking a job for not only a third of your life. If you break down 8 hours a day, you sleep 8 hours, perfect world.
Yeah.
You work 8 hours, but then the commute's creeping into your fucking life too.
Yeah, I think you hit the hammer right on the head right there. I think a lot of these kids are looking at it like, well, why should I do this when I can just do something that I enjoy? And I'm not, relegated to being in this specific space for however many years. And also too, like, things have changed, right? I think social media, we go back to social media, but it's like, it's woven into like the thread of our lives. So we wake up in the morning and now my algorithm is all like, cops interacting with the public, getting recorded and looking crazy. Right. You got 5 guys around one cop recording him because he gave somebody a ticket. Like, the average kid don't want to do that.
Right.
They don't want to deal with that shit. So I feel like, a lot of these kids don't want anything to do with confrontation. They just want to
easy. They want it easy. And you know what? Even the point where, I could call a younger person and they won't answer, but if you text them, they'll answer.
They'll answer, exactly.
It's easier.
Yeah.
And we kind of get the juice from the interaction. Just our generation, right? It was the first generation that it was
like, we're built different. Yeah, we're built way different. We are more hands-on. We are more interactive than they are. I see it right now because I see the shift in policing. Because now, like, that old school supervisor that screams and yells, that shit's not effective anymore. These kids want like some positive reinforcement. And then you always got the old guard that's like, hey man, this is a paramilitary organization. Yeah, there's power in front of military. And a lot of these kids, they don't come from that. They don't come from that. This is the but why generation. They're
like my kids.
Yeah, it's like we're from the shut the fuck up and do it. And we just did it. These kids are like, why? I want to know why you're telling me to do this.
And there's usually not a good enough explanation in their defense.
Yeah.
So they've woken up a little bit. Now, we talk about generational shifts, excuse me. What do you see in terms of your, I know you're also involved with this social club. I got to meet your partner the other day.
Shout out to Vinny.
Yeah, man. Vinny's a good dude. I met him briefly at an event in Jersey, and then we got to sit down and have an amazing conversation that lasted almost 2 hours because it was just a good dude.
I could see you and him vibing.
Yeah,
well, great thinkers and great thinkers get in rooms. Great conversation.
And listen, no slouch here either, but yeah, you're more direct. You say what you got to say and move on. And I like that too, right? We all bring our strengths to the table, and if we're able to get our ego out of the way and work together, we can create some beautiful things. So I know that he couldn't be here today for the same reason that my ass is coughing up a lung because his kids are sick. But tell us a little bit about Agora Social Club, what your vision for that is beyond policing, because I know you're coming up on your potential end date for service. Yeah. And I want to, brother, thank you for what you do.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Despite having a criminal record, I've also done some good, positive things in the world.
I see that.
And the whole goal is to serve the community. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that you can change the narrative around how people view police officers. And I would also have to imagine that you've impacted some of your own officers by some of the work you do.
Would hope so.
Yeah. And now you're aiming to do that in the public space.
Yeah.
And what's your vision for Agora?
Yeah, it's I think it's going to be a cutting edge facility for men's mental fitness. I feel like men don't really have a place where they can kind of unwind, unpack, and relax. This would be a community geared towards just that, where men can kind of come, relax, do their thing, and not have any worry while they're in the club. So it's going to be like a hybrid of sorts, right? You're going to be able to roll on some jiu-jitsu mats, be able to get your a workout in. It's going to be community workspace. So if you wanted to do a podcast, there'd be a room like this, a barber shop. And and then some contrast therapy. Like, to me, that is the epitome of like how I would like to spend like an off day.
Yeah.
Like just relax. If I could get some work done on the laptop, get that done, and with some peace and quiet. Clean shave, real quick, little workout, sauna, cold plunge, and then head home.
This sounds like a perfect day.
Yeah, man. So we're trying to make that
easy
vision.
as men, ladies. Just in case this has turned into now a relationship podcast. We are pretty easy creatures.
Yeah.
So I'm wishing you the best.
Thank you, brother.
Let our audience know more about how they can find you on social media and follow you. And then obviously Agora, how you can start promoting that beautiful thing you guys are doing up there.
Yeah, man. So I'm the real Jumpman J on TikTok and Instagram. I'm also the CMO of Agora Social Club. So if you head over to Agora Social Club, you'll see us all on there. It's a facility that's coming soon. And I'm praying that you guys just follow the journey and continue to just help us get to our goal. But yeah, man, I'm done with policing in 2027. And the goal is to, be a full-time entrepreneur, knee deep in Agora Social Club. So
you pose a good question here for me that I wasn't thinking of, but what are some of the skills maybe you learned as a peace officer that you can apply to entrepreneurship and maybe inspire some of your other brothers who are on the job and decide to move on to do some good things?
That's a great question.
I try.
Yeah, phenomenal question, brother. I feel like the one thing that I have learned is that everybody wants to be heard. I feel like if you just have an authentic conversation with somebody, you can get something from somebody. I feel like a lot of the times we just go through the motions in conversation. Hey, how you doing? And kind of keep it pushing. But I think if you really just sit down and listen, you can kind of tell by, body language or how they're saying what they're saying that someone's going through something. And just that alone has gotten me to level up in my career. I think that's what I would bring to entrepreneurship, just being able to have an authentic, real conversation.
And listening is a superpower. And
Absolutely.
I think men, I realized this myself, being raised by a single mother, how I show up sometimes. And, an unintelligent person can take this however the fuck they want. But, you show up with a femininity that you've learned from being in a single mom household.
Yeah.
And you get butthurt about shit that, men who have been raised by men wouldn't necessarily take so personally.
Yes.
And I realized this and I was able to not unlearn it, but just kind of enhance who I am, which is embrace the beautiful things that my mother taught me and gave me.
Yeah.
But also learn to be a man. And I also say the beauty of not being raised by a father was that I got to create the man that I wanted to be without any restrictions. Now, I've been very fortunate. Unfortunately, most people may not be able to find the same level of certainty that I have.
Yeah.
Not to say that I'm not still learning. So that's why I think having a brotherhood and also a space to embrace the fact that it's okay to be a man,
yes,
but a new age man that can love his woman and play with his children like your grandparents and your father didn't, but at the same time understand that we need to be listened to. And I think that shit
That's a gem right
so lost on other men and on women.
Yeah.
I think the culture has shifted so
much,
man, that we have lost our masculinity. Some of us never even knew what it was and then found it later in life through conversations with other brothers.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not fucking crazy. So kudos to you, my man.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you for your service,
the
job you did
Yes,
in
sir.
the community, in the world, and what you got coming next. Thank you all for tuning in to the Real Mentors podcast. Make sure you follow Jason. Make sure you follow Agora Social Club and see all the amazing things that they're going to be doing up in Mamaroneck and the greater Westchester area. So if you're in that area, this is definitely for you, man. Trust me when I tell you, you got two great brothers and whoever their network is to lean on. So if you find yourself in need of a conversation or just somewhere to be, that sounded real cool, make sure you check them out. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Let's get it.